to I-24 News Defense, a weekly review of strategic affairs, security intelligence, and more, in cooperation with Israel Defense Magazine. In this edition, in depth on the ongoing deterioration in Jerusalem with Israel's former national security advisor, Giora Eiland, and the Egyptian attempts to stop the spread of the Ansar Beit maqdis Islamist group. Let's begin. Jerusalem is once again on edge following a night of clashes and a day that saw two separate hit-and-run terror attacks. Early Wednesday afternoon, a Palestinian driver rammed his car into a group of pedestrians along the light rail in East Jerusalem. Hours later, that night, another driver ran over 3 Israeli soldiers in the West Bank, close to the town of Bethlehem. One of the soldiers was critically injured, the other seriously injured. I-24 News correspondent Jaffa Port has more on how the day unfolded.
These images are growing more and more familiar in the streets of Jerusalem. One person was killed and 14 others wounded, 3 of them seriously, when a car slammed into pedestrians in Jerusalem in what authorities are calling another vehicular terror attack. The driver rammed his van into crowds standing at the light rail station on Shimon HaTzadik Street. He then continued towards nearby Moshe Zaks Street, where he crashed into more people, then stepped out of the car and attacked passers-by with a metal crowbar. He was stopped, shot and killed on the spot by security forces.
The quick response of the border police officer who chased the terrorist to this junction, shot and killed him, was the right action, and this is the way I would like to see such an incident end. A terrorist who kills civilians deserves to die.
Medical officials said that 3 of those hospitalized are seriously hurt, 3 are moderately injured, and the rest suffered light wounds. The driver, Ibrahim El-Akari, is a known Hamas activist from the Shoafat refugee camp in East Jerusalem. He was the brother of a Palestinian prisoner released in the exchange agreement of captured soldier Gilad Shalit.
We must remember that the attacker's goal is to disrupt our lives. The more we fear and halt our daily lives, the more they are victorious. And we won't give them this victory.
2 weeks ago, a similar incident took place at a nearby light rail station in Jerusalem. In the attack, a woman and infant were killed and 8 more injured, in what appears to be a repeating terror pattern in the growing chaos of the city.
Joining me now from Herzliya is Israel's former National Security Advisor, Reserve Major General Giora Eiland. Mr. Eiland, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
So, General, I must begin, of course, with the current situation in Jerusalem. With these vehicular attacks, is Israel facing a new trend in terror, albeit perhaps a less advanced one?
The use of vehicles in order to cause terrorist attacks is not new tactics. Actually, it was a very popular tactics that the Palestinians used during the Second Intifada. And I think that we have to be better prepared for something like this. But I'm not sure that we are in the beginning of a new intifada, as so many people suggest. I think that in a way there is some kind of misunderstanding in regard to what is happening in the Temple Mount. And surprisingly, the government of Israel does not have any intention to change any of the procedures that exist there since '67. And unfortunately, the Israeli government did not convey this message in a clear way, because if it is said in a clear way 2 weeks ago, then it might at least reduce the tension, or at least remove the excuses that so many Palestinian leaders use in order to justify this riot. So besides the much stronger and strict security measures that are supposed to be taken by us, at the very same time it is important to convey this message and actually to eliminate, if you want, the only excuse that is used by so many why this kind of riots and protest have begun.
So, as you mentioned, there is discussion of a third intifada and sharp rhetoric rising on both sides. What else do you think needs to be done to prevent the situation from crossing the line, so to speak?
Usually it is a combination of at least 2 things. One is, of course, to increase the presence of military forces, and something that in the past 6-7 years we could enjoy a relative calm situation in the West Bank and Jerusalem. Today we have to understand that we have to deploy much more forces and to have the Israeli presence, military presence, much more bold and to enable much more immediate responses whenever something happens. And at the same time, I believe that some proactive actions should be taken vis-a-vis those who are inciting for this kind of attacks. At the very same time, as I said, Israel can convey in a parallel message that we do not have any intention to change anything in the situation, the status quo, so to call, in Jerusalem, and we are ready to try to improve the relationship between us and the Palestinians in the West Bank. So I believe that, contrary to the past, it is still reversible, it is still can be contained, and we don't necessarily have to be in a beginning of new intifada.
Do you agree with Benjamin Netanyahu pointing a finger at Mahmoud Abbas for incitement?
It is certainly, this situation is used by Mahmoud Abbas and other Palestinian leaders in order to encourage certain actions against us. And in a way, Mr. Abbas is playing a double game, because on one hand, whenever he's asked, he said that, no, I'm against terrorist activities, I'm only for a political solution. But at the very same time, he sent very opposite messages to those who actually choose to carry out this kind of terrorist attack. So in this regard, I do agree with the Prime Minister.
General Eiland, you note that Israel does not, in fact, want to change the status quo at the Temple Mount. Yet 20 years after signing a peace treaty with Israel, Jordan has recalled its ambassador over issues including this one. Is this a sign of a deterioration in relations?
No, I don't think so. I think that in the end of the day, Jordan today, maybe more than in any other time, does need a security cooperation with Israel, because Jordan is under different kind of threat, especially from the east, from ISIS, and they do need certain Israeli intelligence assistance and other things. But Jordan is, of course, under a lot of political pressure, and as long as there is some ambiguity in regard to the question whether the government of Israel change unilaterally the procedures that exist in the Temple Mount or does not do it, then Jordan has to respond the way that they do. And again, I emphasize it again, if Israel does say in a very clear and bold voice, no, we do not intend to make any change in the existing procedures that existed for so many years, it might give the Jordanians a good reason, if you want, good excuse to return to normal relationship.
Let's move for a moment to the northern front. Hezbollah has issued threats to Israel of late. Do you think they're to be believed given Hezbollah's deep involvement in the Syrian civil war?
I tend to agree that contrary to the situation that existed until a few months ago, when Hezbollah on one hand was well deterred by Israel and secondly was deeply involved in the situation in Syria, they believe that this 8 years of relative calm might or can end. And in a way, their interpretation of the last event in Gaza are that Israel is not as strong as we try to present ourselves. And maybe time has come, as far as they are concerned, to try to challenge the Israeli determination to fight against them. I'm not sure that they made a decision that they want to begin a similar high-level confrontation, similar to what happened during the Second Lebanese War. But certainly they are ready to make more risks. And I believe that, or I think that Israel should convey an opposite message in which we say that whenever and whatever a violence begins from Lebanon vis-a-vis Israel, it will lead not only to confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah, but also to a real war between Israel and the state of Lebanon. And I think that Hezbollah has to think twice whether they are interested in such a development.
Major General Giora Eiland, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Moving on now, the Egyptian army launched an operation to create a buffer zone some 13 kilometers wide on the country's border. The goal is to restrain the activities and arms smuggling of the extremist Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, which Egyptian President el-Sisi views as an existential threat. More from Sagiv Steinberg.
Egypt has declared a 3-month state of emergency in parts of the Sinai Peninsula following a series of attacks that cost the life of 33 soldiers. While the country is in mourning, the Egyptian army began a large-scale operation in North Sinai. The operation aims to prevent terrorist organizations from smuggling explosives and weapons from Gaza to Islamic extremists in Egypt. The Rafah crossing into the Gaza Strip was also closed, and a night curfew was imposed. 2 years after Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Egyptian army pushed out the Muslim Brotherhood and Mohammed Morsi from power, the Muslim Brotherhood and its partner groups, including al-Qaeda cells and Bedouin tribes, have been conducting terror attacks in Sinai and within Egypt, particularly in strategic areas such as the Suez Canal. According to Egyptian officials, al-Sisi intends to widen the northern Sinai border near Khan Yunis and Rafah, creating a buffer zone. In the process, 62 houses were handed over to the army in an area where hundreds of houses were evacuated over the past 2 years, leaving many homeless. Residents of northern Sinai say they received brief warning to pack their belongings and leave. Egyptian human rights activists caution that the evacuation will be a severe blow to residents of the area. Egyptian officials claim these actions are vital in maintaining national security. Others also say ever since Operation Protective Edge ended, the siege on Gaza and its implications were somewhat forgotten, and that recent Egyptian activities add more stress to the region, affecting Hamas and the ceasefire.
And joining me now in the studio is military correspondent Ron Ben-Ishai. Mr. Ben-Ishai, thanks very much for being with me. So you've studied this group, Ansar, Beit and maqdis, that we just saw a bit of in the report quite extensively. The group, I understand, was at some point related to al-Qaeda. With the onset of the Islamic State group, has that changed? Has their allegiance changed?
Yes. They even announced it officially 2 days ago. But they applied to be recognized by the IS before, only a few days ago.
Is there an official application these days?
They are now, they have the franchise, really, the franchise of, the official franchise of IS in the Sinai Peninsula. Before that, they applied in the same way to be an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, and got recognition by bin Laden heir, Ayman Zawahiri, and they were recognized too, and now they changed allegiance. What
so if the group has
changed? And before that, they were actually Salafist from the Gaza Strip.
A little bit of an identity crisis, it sounds like.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If the group has changed its allegiance, what can you tell me about the members of the group who are applying to be part of the group?
It's an eclectic, real eclectic group. In the original version, they were members of a Salafist group in Gaza that were, by the way, a problem for Hamas, very heavy problem for Hamas, because they did whatever they wanted to do in spite and in order to annoy Hamas. And because they had their feud with Hamas, they moved through the tunnels from Gaza to the Sinai Peninsula, where the Salafist, the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, joined the rebel Bedouins in Sinai that were angry at the Egyptian regime that neglected them. Both of them formed together a small group, and there were several groups like this that were a combination of ultra-religious, fundamentalist, Islamist, Sunnis, not Shiites, that competed for attention.
I want to ask you then for a moment, before going back to the smuggling tunnels and the border, if they have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, is there a goal also in Islamic Caliphate? What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah, they are trying to be, look, the Islamic Caliphate, the IS is striving, is in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, and to some extent Jordan. This is the ISIS, the original ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. But Sinai can be an affiliate, can be a franchise. As I said,
I
was not joking. I was not laughing. This is a franchise, and as a franchise, they are as dangerous as the original thing, because they say we are applying the same ideology, theology, and we are applying the same methods.
So in the very short time, unfortunately, that we have left, is this group a threat to Israel?
Yes. On the long run, yes. At the moment, they are a danger to the Egyptian regime, to the present Egyptian regime headed by President Sisi, General Sisi, Field Marshal Sisi. But in the long run, we are there. We are third on the list.
All right. Well, not very optimistic, but Mr. Ron Ben Ishai, thank you very much for being with me.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much, and thank you for watching. That's it for this edition. Tune in next week, every Thursday, for another edition of I-24 News Defense from here in the Jaffa Port.